What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome into the writer's room, and we got a packed house tonight. I hope you guys are ready for it because we got some talking points. But first, let me go around the room. Alec, how are you doing?
Same old, another week.
There you go. Love to hear it. Doc, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for asking. It's my birthday tomorrow.
Ooh,
Nice.
A little early birthday. There you go.
Happy early birthday.
Like to see it. And then Jeremy, welcome to the writer's room. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a while. I haven't really written anything in a
who
bit, but
cares?
I'm still a writer, I guess. But happy early birthday, Alex. Our birthdays are only apart by like 3 or 4 days.
Oh, my goodness, are you a Cancer?
Yes, in more ways than one.
Oh,
jeez, just
Kidding.
went there quickly.
hey,
All
we're
right.
emotional.
Some self-deprecation humor there.
Well, at least we got 2 birthdays coming up, to offset that self-deprecation. But I guess we'll just hop right into it, and we'll go right into the first article breakdown that is for this week, and we'll jump right into Alex. Alec, what did you think of these defensive tackle additions? Obviously, you wrote about it. You felt a certain way about it, but give us your initial opinions. How did you feel when you saw that news?
Personally, I was really happy to see we actually picked up a true one tech and has experience there and played there. That makes me really happy to see. I think just adding more depth to the D line and getting more players that can sub in, give stars some rest, give all of our players, keep them fresh. I think that's always a good thing to have.
Right, absolutely. If you guys want to check out more on this topic, obviously we're going to be talking about it for the next 5 to 10 minutes or so, but I just put it in the chat so you can check out all of Alex's writing on this specific topic. Mm-hmm. Doc, what did you think about the 2 signings of Eli Ankou and Nazair Jones?
Yeah, I think it added some beef up front, as we talked about in the past. That was much needed, as we think it would fill holes for the one technique. But, grand scheme of things, I just feel like these are bodies outside looking in. And if someone shines, we might actually see them. But I'm not putting a lot of weight into them, to be honest.
So, Jeremy, are you in the same kind of boat where you wanted some extra bodies, some extra competition for this defensive tackle room, but you don't really see these 2 guys cracking the final roster?
Yeah, my first thoughts with these 2 guys was, who are these guys? I've never heard of them before. And yeah, I do kind of agree with Alex. I do think they're just kind of extra bodies. I think the Bills are about a year too late when it comes to signing a one tech. I think that's something they probably should have taken care of last offseason. But yeah, I totally agree. Outside looking in with the defensive tackles that we currently have, as well as I think the crowded defensive end room that we're going into the season with.
Yeah, that's actually a great point to transition to, because the whole point of why I wanted to bring this up, I'm actually somewhat excited about Nazair Jones. I liked him his rookie season coming out of North Carolina. He did all right with the Seahawks, kind of fizzled out, hasn't done much since. But really the whole talking point with this to me is the defensive line unit as a whole is already so crowded. It's going to be so tough to figure out from our point of view, and even from a Brandon Beane's perspective, who's making this final roster, because it's tight. There's a lot of dudes, a lot of good players, and it's going to be really tough to cut some of these good players that could find themselves on other final rosters here. So yeah, I think it's going to be difficult to sit here and say that either one of these 2 guys really makes the final roster. But yeah, I think we're all excited to see at least some competition for people like Starr or Harrison Phillips to really push them, because obviously iron sharpens iron. You want to see these guys compete. You don't want them to get complacent. But I'm not so sure this team is really going to get complacent under the leadership of Sean McDermott. But I know there was a specific talking point that, Doc, you wanted to get to with this defensive line, and obviously these defensive tackles might not resonate with that talking point, but I still want to give you your space to talk about it, because Nazair Jones is one of those lengthier guys, and I think that fits into what you want to talk about with the defensive line. So I'll give you the floor.
Oh yeah. So the thing is let's just the eye test, right? I didn't think the Bills got a great pass rush all year. I felt like there was times these guys had a long time to sit in the pocket and got comfortable. But then when you people are pulling up these stats and they're saying that we're like the second or third fastest guys on the pass rush win rate. It's kind of surprising. So what gives? Are the guys good? Are we actually good pass rushers? And it's just we got leaky coverage, or are these guys just not finishers? So I don't know. I just wanted to kind of bring that up and see what you guys all thought about that.
Anyone have any initial thoughts on that to answer that?
Well, I definitely would piggyback when I saw you guys talking about it. That's something, me as a I want to say casual observer, but I mean somebody who like really watches and enjoys talking about this. I'm not like an X's and O's guy, but I think a lot of Bills fans, we want to see more sacks happening with our defensive ends, and it can be frustrating that it's not happening. But we are hearing, these stats about all the pressure we're getting and how guys like Ed Oliver and Jerry Hughes are beating their guy and beating double teams. And so, half the reason I came here was just to get like a front row seat to this discussion, because I'm curious too. It's like, why are we like? It's almost like we're tired of hearing about all the pressures and like how good they're being. It's like, cool. Why can't they, finish the job though? So yeah, I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to think about that.
Yeah, it's funny because even Rico was talking about, I don't know if you guys saw it, but finishing and how this defensive line really needs to finish this year and everything around that. But Alec, what do you think this little paradigm, this dynamic of pass coverage versus pass rush and the relationship between the two?
Personally, I think we do play a softer coverage behind our pass rush, and we try to let our front four do the work for us. They have really good pass rush moves. Like, they're able to win off the ball. The problem is I just don't see many of them as actual finishers. Like, they don't have, I don't want to say the athleticism, but the final drive to end up getting there before the quarterback can get the ball off. Hopefully with these two young pass rushers we just got in Rousseau and Basham, I think that they will get mentored by some of these older guys with the good pass rush moves, and that they will be able to turn into absolute monsters on the field, and they will actually end up being our finishers.
I couldn't agree more with that, Alec. I really think it's tough to contextualize the whole thing, because when you're just watching the game and then you get those stats like Doc, you were laying out, like you hear how quickly we're getting to pressure and how great our pass rush win rate is, but it means nothing if you're not finishing. And I think, Alec, you set it up perfectly by saying we do play softer coverage on the back. There was a lot of times last year where you saw the Bills defense dropping 3 or 4 guys deep, and they're just like, all right, keep everything in front of us. We'll give you the easy, shallow stuff, and we're just going to make sure you don't hit us with any like deep gashing plays like that. And by doing that, obviously, it makes it easier for a quarterback to just dink and dunk it down the field methodically when someone's pass rushing like right in your face. It makes it easier to have that little bailout pass, and that's why I think it's really tough to sit here and blame either or. It's just the relationship between the two that creates this kind of conundrum that we're all in as spectators, where we're like, what's wrong with the defensive line, or what's wrong with the secondary? It's just kind of the relationship between the two that causes this issue. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's any one player's fault. I'm not going to sit here and say it's Leslie Frazier's fault or anything like that. It's just kind of how the Bills defense wants to operate. And I think it's a good way to do it. But like Alex said, it's about getting that like finishing touch on it. And I think the guys we have in Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison are just over that peak where they don't have that final gear to finish. And like you said, if they can pass along and polish and refine those younger guys like Rousseau and Basham,
be a beautiful sight.
They have that extra gear. If they can get that technical refinement to still win at the point of attack, we're golden. We're golden. So what do you guys think we're going to get from the defensive line this year? Do you think they're going to change coverage to make it easier on that defensive line so quarterbacks aren't quickly passing the ball and dumping it off? What do you think is going to happen? Jeremy, I'll start with you. What do you think is going to happen? What can we expect from the defensive line this year?
Well, my thought, and you guys can tell me if you agree with this or not, but I kind of feel like the only real defensive ends we had last season were Addison and Hughes.
Yeah.
Trent Murphy, he was a healthy scratch sometimes. So that tells you about how well he was playing when he was playing. AJ Epinesa had a very slow start. He started to come on a little bit later, and then Taron Johnson he's a special teamer. He flashed in preseason, like the year before he got a spot, and for that reason, he's still on the team. So really, I feel like we just have like those two guys who were kind of holding it down. So I wonder if the additions, and again, I mentioned earlier how kind of crowded I think this room is because we have Hughes and Addison. I really don't think they're going to go anywhere, especially after Addison's restructure. We signed F.A. Obata, which I got excited about, but then we drafted Russo and Basham, and we have Epinesa. So it's 6 guys right there who, I'd like to see all of them on the team. If we could maybe trade, I don't know, Addison and get it down to 5, I'd like to see them all, but I don't know. But I'm hoping with, Epinesa in his second year, Russo and Basham being a part of that, if they can just be more productive as rotational players, then I think that maybe Addison and Hughes get a little more rest, and that can kind of increase their production. Just having better rotational players, I think, is going to make this defense better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. What's up, Doc? What you thinking?
Yeah, so now they brought in this length, and it's like, well, are these guys – what does length actually do? Does that get them to the pass rusher faster? Not necessarily. They might be less, slower type players. But then it made me think, if it's a scheme thing, we bend, we don't break. We play this soft zone. We give these guys some leeway off the line. Maybe McDermott wants the taller DNs because they can plug up the passing lanes with their length, and that's more what it's about. It's not about actually finishing because we can actually get through there. He knows these guys can get the ball off quick against his defense. He just wants guys that can get his arm up, clog up the lanes. That's when deflections come, and then you get the picks. I just thought of that as we were just kind of hashing this out.
I mean, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. It's just, is that the primary reason that they're drafting a guy? Was length and that foresight to be like, oh, Rousseau's length is going to be the reason for multiple interceptions because he can bat the ball down. Was that the primary driver for drafting him? Or was it the fact that he has so much length that it enables him to disengage from blockers a little bit easier? There's so many different ways you could talk about that length and what the pros and the cons may be. But that is definitely something that we could really reap the benefits of this year, this Bills defense. Because I don't know if you guys remember, but I feel like probably 2017, 2016, somewhere like that, I felt like we had a lot of tip passes at the defensive line that turned into interceptions. And it's not like that was a personnel thing necessarily, but it was just a effectiveness thing. It's just, if you're getting your hand on the ball and it's going straight up in the air, I like the chances of the defense coming through it instead of the offense kind of backtracking to it to make that play. But that's definitely an area where the Bills could improve this year, because they really didn't do that a whole lot last year, bat the ball down at the line of scrimmage. So I'd like to see that more definitely next year. But Alec, what do you see next year from this defensive line?
So going off what Doc said with getting your hands in the passing lanes, I think it's a healthy mix of that and the finishing is why we drafted both of these guys. So they both have the ability to finish on the play, but with them having all this length, one, it helps them in their rush moves. They're able to manipulate guys more. They have longer arms. They're able to move their legs faster. But also, if you just get your hands up and make it hard for the quarterback just to get off a pass, or even if you don't deflect it and just get in his eyes and make it hard for him to see, something good is going to happen at that point.
No, I 100% agree. I think the length is definitely part of it in terms of what you were saying, Doc, with getting in the passing lanes. But I also go back to what you said earlier, Alec, and that final gear and really finishing on the quarterback. When I was doing film work on Russo and Basham, they just both have great motors. They're never stopping. They're always trying to get to that quarterback. They're doing everything they can to make the play. And even if they're not around the play at the time, at the final whistle, they do find themselves right next to the football. So I really like what they have in terms of mental makeup. You hear guys like Harrison Phillips talk about those two rookies and how they want to be good, and how they're not just there and they think that they're already good enough. They want to learn and they want to be good. Those are the kind of human beings that we want to bring into the Buffalo Bills organization. And Doc, you talked about that a lot last time that when we were on, we were talking about Richard Sherman or Steven Nelson. A lot of the prerequisites that you were bringing up was well, are they a good human being? Because I mean, the Bills aren't going to bring anyone in that just isn't going to fit the culture. And I think the Bills did a great job this year in the draft by finding guys that fit their culture.
They seem to always do that.
They do.
But you can't win championships with just nice guys.
No, you can't.
So-
but that's definitely or I don't want to sit here and say definitely, but it feels like that's what was missing during those drought years. We had a lot of guys that were kind of doing it for themselves, not a lot of guys doing it for the team. And there was kind of like a disconnectedness to the team. A lot of guys just individually playing well, but not a lot of guys playing together in unison. And I mean, that's just me as an observer, as a younger observer too, because I was a lot younger during the drought. But that's just kind of where I see the contrast in the drought years versus the now years. It just feels a lot more family-like, a lot more connectiveness. But any final thoughts on the defensive line group? Because I'm going to move it on to my article if there are not any final thoughts. All right.
Moving on.
So I guess we'll flip on the head of defensive line versus pass coverage, and we'll jump into my article, which really just highlighted the air raid hour and how we talked about the secondary. But what I really wanted to narrow down on with the secondary was UDFAs, because I think we can all agree that, the top of the Bills secondary with Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, and Tre'Davious White, it's great. Like, these guys have been here since 2017, since McDermott arrived. This secondary has been great since McDermott arrived, and those guys are the mainstays of that group. And it's always been about finding that fourth guy, and that fourth guy is seemingly Levi Wallace. But I guess I'll start there before I hop into the UDFAs. I want to talk to you guys about CB2, because it really seems like we're just kind of there with CB2, kind of just meh with CB2, and we're going to have to take what we can get right now, and this is the hand that we're being dealt, and that hand is Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson. So, Alec, I'll start with you. Who do you think's going to win the battle right now? If you, obviously we don't have a whole lot of evidence that's going to sway you one way or the other, but if you just had to put your neck out there, who do you think's going to win the battle, and are you comfortable with either of them winning the battle, or would you want them to make an addition?
So just because of the offseason that Dane Jackson had with him working with Aaron Donald saying that Dane Jackson actually pushed him, I'd love to see Dane Jackson play that cornerback 2 role. I feel like he's so hungry. He wants all of the time he could possibly get. He wants to be out there and show what he can do. I think you just have to give him that opportunity, and that would be one of our best things. Now, do I feel comfortable with that? I mean, not as comfortable as I'd like to, but I don't feel any more comfortable with Levi Wallace there. I feel like they're at about the same point.
Jeremy, what are your thoughts similarly on that CB2 spot?
I would want to lean towards Dane Jackson only because I guess he's the newer phase. We know what we get with Levi Wallace, and I think we were all ready for a change, like somebody new. I mean, he's had flashes where he's played fantastic, but he's also showed that he can be a reliability and get picked on. So it would be nice if, Dane Jackson won it, because again, that would be a new face and somebody who could possibly be an upgrade over Levi Wallace, who like I said, he's fine. He's not bad. I'm totally fine with having Levi Wallace on this team as depth. But like I said, I think we've all been wanting that CB2 upgrade, and I'd love to see if Dane Jackson is that upgrade.
So, Doc, you gonna dare refute and go on the other side of this? Do you think Levi Wallace is gonna win it, or are you enticed by this potential that Dane Jackson could bring?
I think Dane is going to be the man. And if you think back to one of Bean's first press conferences, who was he on the show with? Richard Sherman?
Chris Collinsworth and Rich Sherman, yeah.
I mean, he shouted out Dane Jackson, and that was way early in the process here. So I think that's where they want to go with this. The fact they haven't brought in competition. And think about what we usually do. It seems like the past few years we've brought in a cheap veteran CB2. So, the guy who quit, we had
Vontae Davis.
Yeah, Vontae Davis.
How dare you bring his name up?
Hey, you got to say it. Even before that, it was I'm not doing good on recall, but it seems like every year they bring in that veteran CB2.
No,
they just use him for a year. Boom. The guy who opted out for COVID, they had him, 2 years ago.
EJ Gaines?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was here in 2017, then opted out last year when we decided to bring him back before COVID.
I feel like that was the similar thing, a veteran CB2. So the fact they didn't bring one in, they got to be high on these guys. It can't be Levy Wallace. I know that they're not that high on him. It's got to be Dane Jackson.
I don't know. I'm really with you on that point where like they didn't bring anyone in to this point, so they're clearly comfortable at least with the competition between those two guys, or at least the idea of them platooning together to almost be a CB2 by committee kind of thing. Yeah. But I'm gonna disagree with all of you guys. I just think he's got it in the bag unless Dane really comes out like head on fire, just lighting up the field during training camp. I think right now, Hombre, I see you. I've been doing it for weeks, and I'm kind of trying to like throw some water on the Dane Jackson fire. And I don't mean to, because I'm just excited as everyone else is about the potential that Dane Jackson brings. I loved everything I saw from him last year. I just want to pump the brakes and say Levi Wallace is serviceable. He's sufficient. He's also upgradable. And that's why I think we all want something more. I'm just not going to sit here and say that Dane Jackson is that, because we don't have enough sample size to definitively say that. But
hey, we're guessing here though.
We're all guessing. And because he's so upgradable, that's why we're all like clinging on to that potential and that small sample size from that last year, because it was good.
And I would not be surprised we start with Levi, and then as the season goes on, you just kind of see this switch.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, Jeremy.
McDermott always does it after the bye week.
Yeah, I was going to say
the same thing.
I wouldn't be surprised if, Levi Wallace is out there starting game one, but a few snaps later, there's Dane Jackson in, and they're kind of going back and forth like we were doing with him and Josh Norman when they were both healthy.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, that's where I think it's going to go. I feel like unless Dane Jackson just really kills it in training camp, it's going to be Levi week 1, and then Levi's just on a short leash. It's just like if he really can't put some consistency together, which I'd argue he is really consistent. It's just like consistently a little bit below the bar that we all set for what we want at CB2. And because of that, we want Dane Jackson to be better. But yeah, I think it's just Levi Wallace week 1. He's on a relatively short leash because they really like Dane Jackson. And from there, I'll answer my own question that I started off with. I'm not super comfortable with it, but I'm okay with it. Like, I believe that it can be sufficient given all the 10 other players that would be on the field at the same time. I believe that whoever it is at CB2 can do their 111th sufficiently enough. And that's really all I'm rocking with for this year in CB2.
Are we going to talk about any other secondary positions by any chance?
We're definitely getting into safety. And that's kind of where I wanted to go next, unless you specifically had thoughts on maybe Taron Johnson.
Yeah, that's exactly who I wanted to touch on. And I know, Taron Johnson, he made, 2 of the most memorable plays of this season this past year. But I, can't help but think about his inconsistency. We got to remember that he basically got benched at the beginning of the season. He didn't have just a bad game here or there. He had a stretch of pretty poor play to the point to where they said, hey, Cam Lewis, undrafted free agent, you go out there and try. And this is a contract year for him. So I really think, Taron Johnson needs to play like he did in the second half of the season, this entire season, for me to feel comfortable with giving him an extension. Because, like I said, I know he made those memorable plays, but he's also, like I said, had a lot of inconsistency, and I'm not ready to just, make a statue for him because of those 2 pictures, which are great. I love seeing them, but I just don't feel like we should just, give him the keys, right off the bat.
So, Alec, I'll turn to you on Taron. Are you in the same boat? I'll specifically ask you, where do you feel, or where do you lie when it comes to extending Taron Johnson?
This is going to be a big season to sway my word. Right now, I'm pretty much split down the middle. Just like he said, I need to see that consistency throughout the season. I need to see you making those big plays in more than just a couple games. I need to see that consistency. I need to see it all the time.
Right. Doc, same boat?
Yeah, Taron, he was terrible earlier in the year. The first the first stretch at the start of the season, and then he did come on. I thought he played more consistently towards the end, and then he had some showtime out there. We'll see. His 4th year, correct?
Yeah,
Coming
I
up.
believe this is his 4th year. Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know. And then we got Wild Goose. Would you say he is the potential heir apparent for nickel?
He is and he isn't. There's so many different thoughts swirling about Rashad Wild Goose. Jeremy,
both, right?
Yeah, I think he could play both. Is that what you had to say about him?
I was going to ask because I remember kind of like I don't really watch the college football. I go through the draft network's profiles and stuff and learn about these guys this way. And I remember reading about how Wild Goose could possibly he can be outside and at nickel. And I was happy with that. I was like, cool. At least let Taron Johnson have some legit competition at the role. Like I said, don't just give him the keys. He needs the competition. Yeah,
and this is, I guess, where I'll start to transition to the UDFAs. Ombre, I've seen you. I've seen you, buddy. I'm kind of on this train.
Wild Goose.
He doesn't like Wild Goose for whatever reason. He's off the Wild Goose train, the Wild Goose hunt, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on this Elijah Griffin thing. I think Elijah Griffin is someone that can also be that outside in. He's a UDFA. He's Warren G's son from USC. That guy that may or may not put butts in seats. But I actually think he's good enough. He's not someone I'm going to sit here, pound the table, and say he's going to make the final roster. But he is someone that showed a good amount of competitive toughness during his time at USC. And he really does have a knack for getting a hand on the football, breaking on routes, really breaking up that catch point. And he plays a lot more physical than his size will tell you. He's a bit slight. I think he's just shy of 6 feet, and he's very similar body build to Levi Wallace, where he's just very slender, long arms kind of thing. But he plays bigger than that. He really does. He plays very physical and aggressive. So that leads me to believe he could play in the nickel. And hopefully, like you said, Jeremy, that's something that can push Taron to be more consistent. But I'll push this way back to Taron specifically. And I'm just in this really weird boat with him because I want him to be better, specifically in coverage. I think we all like what he brings as a guy in run support, as that quasi third linebacker in our nickel defense. But he's just so inconsistent when it comes to coverage, and he proves to be a liability at times. And those two pick sixes do not erase that inconsistency. It definitely dampens the inconsistency, and it makes you feel a little bit better about it, but it doesn't take it away. And the problem is, if he gets better at it and gets more consistent with it, he could play himself right out of the Buffalo Bills price range because of the fifth-year options that are going to be on the books next year with Josh Allen and Tremaine Edmonds. I think that's $30 million on the books next year combined. So I'm just really split on it because I want him to stay. I really like what he brings to this defense, that physicality from that nickel corner position. But if he gets any more consistent at coverage from that position, he could play himself out of the price range and ultimately get a really nice deal on the open market. So that's where I am with Taron, because I do want to keep him, but he's just in this really weird purgatory in my mind where I don't even know what's going to happen next year.
Yeah, we got to be careful to not jinx ourselves because how long has, Bean and McDermott been ignoring our pleas to upgrade CB2? So if he hears us talking about, upgrading the nickel cornerback, then he's like, oh, you want that? Well, now you're not going to get that. So we got to be careful there.
All right, so I'll move on to safety, and I'll put my article in the chat here because this is really the bread and butter of where I wanted to go with safety or where I wanted to go with this UDFA conversation. As much as I like Elijah Griffin and Nick McLeod, I think they have a tougher chance making this roster than a UDFA like Tariq Thompson.
Yep.
And the reason I say that is purely because of the depth behind Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. It's really just going to be tough to find that third and fourth guy. I like to think that DeMar Hamlin is just going to step right in and be that Dean Marlowe for the defense this year. But we can't sit here and guarantee that. He's a rookie. He's still got to learn some things. But I think that fourth spot is up for grabs. and whoever 3rd and 4 are, they're going to be competing all year for that Dean Marlowe role. So really that 4th guy, because I'm just kind of assuming DeMar Hamlin's a lock, that 4th guy at safety, in my opinion, it's down to, well, not even in my opinion, the last 3 guys on the roster. It's Josh Thomas, who I believe was on the practice squad all last year, UDFA from last year, Jaquan Johnson, who we drafted, I believe, in 2019, late round, and then Tariq Thompson, like I just spoke about. And I really like Tariq Thompson. So I'm going to start with Alec because I heard you keep up when I talked about Tariq Thompson. Yeah, what's up?
Where is Saran Neal listed? Are you consider him a corner?
I consider him a corner. Chris Janke, I saw you were in the chat. He's swayed me a decent bit. I used to think he was that like big nickel safety kind of hybrid player, but the more I look at it just kind of seems like he's this 5th CB that doesn't really see the field unless there's an emergency on defense, and then he's just an outstanding gunner on special teams. So I'm just throwing him in.
He's the Daryl Johnson of the
CB room.
Yeah,
that's probably the most apt way to put it. But yeah, Alec, Tariq Thompson. What do you? Obviously, it sounds like you agree with me on him being the UDFA that can make this team. But
absolutely.
Do you think it's more the numbers game, or do you think it's his actual skill, or maybe is it both?
I like his actual skill. He's a great ball hawk. He can play slot corner too, so he'd give Taron Johnson a little bit of competition. Plus, he'd be able to sit behind Hyde and Poyer and learn a lot. And I think it should just be a great thing for him to do. Be a great thing for the team.
Yeah, that's definitely why I've taken notice of Tariq Thompson, not only because he's listed as safety, but when I watched him play at San Diego State, he was playing a lot in the nickel corner role. And like we just talked about with Taron Johnson, like that's a position we want to breed more competition within. We want to bring out the best of Taron Johnson, and hopefully adding competition to that group is a way to do it. But Doc, do you have any thoughts about the backup safeties, specifically Tariq Thompson, or just anyone behind Hyde and Poyer? Because I know I'm not thrilled about what could happen if either of those guys get injured this year.
Yeah, I would consider Johnson a lock, and then you can make a case Tariq Thompson can show up in camp and knock out Hamlin, but I just don't see it happening, to be honest. But these are all guys that we should be landing on our practice squad. The team's got to be thinking long-term at safety. That, you know, what are our guys, 31, 32 now?
I think they're around there. Yeah,
they're in the 30s.
And they're both on they got 2 years left. If I was a betting man, I'd say Hamlin and Jaquan.
Jeremy, you got anything to dispute here?
No, the only thing I can agree with is obviously Jaquan Johnson. I think they like him. He's really good on special teams. And again, these are all players that, you know, if they are playing, either it's because we're blowing them out and we can afford to put them out there, or a terrible injury has happened. But these are like essentially like, you know, backup quarterback. They shouldn't be seeing the field. And I'm not honestly too familiar with any of them. Like I said, we have our safeties for the next 2 to 3 years. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm not super familiar with any of these backups anyway. So, sorry.
Hey, no worries, man. No, I've done my due diligence on it, and I don't expect a lot of other people to waste their time on backup players that may not even see the field. But Doc, I gotta come in here, and I gotta talk about it, because I just, for whatever reason, with Jaquan Johnson, like I saw it on his college tape, and I was really excited about it, and they've kept him on the roster for these past 2 years. But every time this dude has a chance to get defensive snaps, he just doesn't get it. He's had 5% snaps on defense for the entire year with 2019 and 2020. 5% of the snaps for each respective year on defense. Yes, he's a great special teams contributor. But at what point are you keeping, like, where's the tipping point? Why are you just keeping a dude if he's just good enough for special teams? Because in my opinion, if Tariq Thompson is even a fraction of what Jaquan Johnson is on special teams, and you're getting more of that, the difference in what he is on special teams, and you're making up for it on defense, then why wouldn't you take the guy that brings more on the defensive side of the ball, because he's still going to be able to fill that role and do something on special teams, even though, yeah, maybe it might not be as good as Jaquan Johnson. But that's really just where I stand with it, and it's more preference. Like, I don't have an inside scoop on this or anything. That's just kind of my gut reaction on it, and that's why I feel like Tariq Thompson has the best inside track to a roster spot out of any of these UDFAs.
Agree, but what safety did get more than 5% of snaps in the past few years?
I think it was really just Marlowe. So that is a good but that is a good point. Like, there is a reason that Marlowe should get more snaps than Jaquan Johnson, because he's privy to the Sean McDermott defense. So that is a fair point.
Yeah.
But at what point are you guys going to keep or stop keeping special teams players just to play special teams? Like, you have at some point you have to make roster moves so you can have people that can play special teams and actually contribute on their side of the ball.
And I think that's probably going to be the interesting point this year with Daryl Johnson, because I think we all love Daryl Johnson, but is he worth keeping over, I don't know, someone like Obata, or like, I don't know. There's so many different names you could put in there for when I just said Obata. There's just so many guys in that competition, but it's that same argument. Like, where is that tipping point with contributions to defense and special teams? Because right now with Daryl Johnson, it weighs so much more heavily on the special teams side than it does on the defensive side. And if you can't rely on him to give you good rotational snaps on the defensive line, then why are you keeping him as your last defensive lineman or your last defensive end? So there's definitely a similar talking point there when we're talking about Jaquan Johnson and Daryl Johnson. But I would agree with you. Doc. I think Jaquan Johnson probably has a better chance of making this team than Daryl Johnson. But once again, that kind of works more towards the numbers game of anything than it is just the individual players and evaluating those individuals. Any closing thoughts on the secondary? How you guys feel about the secondary UDFA talk, or should we move on to Doc's article?
I got nothing else.
All right, so we'll keep it moving. And Doc, I'm gonna give you the floor here, because there's a lot to unpack when it comes to the two specific players you wanted to cover, and then I'll throw in a third one afterwards when it comes to the injuries at camp. But I will toss his article in the chat. But the first thing I really want you to talk about, Doc, is just the unfortunate accident and injury that happened to Bryan Cox Jr. Because I'm not sure he was someone that was going to make this team or anything, but he's a dude that's scrapping, fighting for a final roster spot, and it was taken away from him for stupid reasons, man. So I just wanted you to talk about it, the nitty-gritty of that injury and what it really means to him in his career.
Yeah, so he tore his Achilles. So that is the cord that attaches your calf to your heel. It's so important for explosive movements. And he needs to get surgery. It's a grade 3 strain. It's snapped in half. So it goes under the knife. They reattach it, and it's a long, lengthy recovery. And it's not something that's like, oh, in 9 months he's like 100%. It takes a year to get back, 9 months to a year. And then these guys, they just don't have the explosiveness back. Probably is going to take 2 years to get back to where he previously was. You'll have a lot of atrophy. It just won't be the same. The positive is he's young. So, I mean, if anyone's going to recover, it's a younger athlete. That's why when Kobe tore his Achilles late in his career, that should have been a career ender. But he
should have been
back. Yeah, right. So that was impressive. But yeah, I mean, the rehabs aren't a slam dunk with the Achilles. A lot of, just so you know. So sometimes it gets overstretched and it gets loose. And once you have a floppy ankle, I mean, you are not getting the tension that you need to be explosive anymore. And you are just permanently limited in that ankle. Yeah. So what does that mean for Bryan Cox? I mean, big picture, he's going into his 5th year next year. He would be a UFA. I mean, when you look at guys that's when their pensions kick in, right? That was a bad time to have that injury. He might not get another shot because the next team that picks him up is going to be on the hook for that pension.
Yeah.
So
that's why it's so sad. And it's just, I wanted to give you the floor about the severity of this injury, because it's like, it's one thing for this dude to get injured in a contract year like this, going into that like second contract window. And it's really, we talked about how tough it's going to be for Taron Johnson to make this team, and it was going to be equally as tough, if not harder, for Bryan Cox Jr. to make it. But then to just throw salt in the wound like this, it's just sad. It really is. And we root for all of these guys. So shout out to Bryan Cox Jr. Hopefully, I know he just had the surgery, and hopefully it's all going well and he's recovering smoothly. So yeah, we wish you a speedy recovery. And yeah, hopefully you can get that second contract and ball out wherever it may be, even if it's not Buffalo. We wish you the best. But
maybe the Raiders. John Gruden seems like pick up our leftovers lately.
Yeah, that's very, very true. He has been doing a lot of that recently.
Let's start speaking that into the universe for Bryan Cox to help him out next year.
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't have to play for that joke over there, though. Hopefully there's a different little vibe going on, different culture by the time he gets there and he can really ball out. But I wanted you, Doc, to talk about the curious case of Cole Beasley's missing tooth, because I don't know what the hell's going on.
So just to backtrack, so the Achilles. Now look, the big thing about Cox is that he's a fringe roster player, so that's what might knock him out of the system there. But like Emmanuel Sanders tore his Achilles, and even if he didn't come back 100%, and I've seen some advanced analytics, and his like explosive times were lower post Achilles, just so you know, like that, his his burst or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you're like an upper echelon player, you come back from Achilles, you might not be at your previous function, but your new function is still way better than the NFL average. So
right,
that's the sad part about the Cox thing. But that I'm not saying that superstars tear their Achilles, they're never coming back, because they do. All right. Yeah. As for Beasley, yeah. So mandatory minicamp was the last thing that we saw, right? Mm-hmm. Prior to that, if you remember, he was out there with his hair just floating in the air. Does everyone remember seeing those passes? Everyone's in a helmet, but he wasn't wearing a helmet. I didn't really think anything of it. And then I saw a tweet that's like, oh, Beasley's in the helmet for the first time since camp started. And that was for mandatory minicamp. And then they had a close-up on him, and he had this like special padding around his cheekbones inside the helmet. And I was like, okay, that's some extra protective equipment. And then there was the big smile with the missing tooth.
Right.
So now if a guy's coming into minicamp, he's not just going to have like I would assume that he's not just going to get an elective surgery at that time and not be able to wear a helmet, and it'd be complicated. Something probably happened where he had to get the tooth out quick, and that's why he was kind of wearing that protective helmet, and he was toothless. I would assume that between now and then camp or real preseason camp starting, he'll have it either capped or replaced. So who does research on someone's tooth? But Yeston did, and that was really cool. So big shout out to him. So he actually found that Beasley was doing a blocking drill when he was with the Cowboys in 2013, and he got leveled by DeMarcus Ware and put his tooth through his lip. And that's all the story. That was all that was to the story. But then you look at his smile, like when the Bills did their press conference, and that same tooth that was missing is pretty discolored and looks different. Mm-hmm. So he might have had some work done back then, or like the nerve in the tooth, was severed, and it was just a matter of a time that, hey, you're eventually going to need this tooth out kind of deal. I think that's like the conclusion that we've come to.
Well, that's good, because I was afraid that he started doing crack or something.
He does, yeah. And then especially the way he was acting on Twitter, right? But, to each their own. I mean, let's not get into it. It's probably smart not to. So
yeah, no, but it's funny. Do you think it's just like one of those like retainers with the tooth in it now, where he's just kind of like popping the retainer in and out whenever the hell he wants to use it? Like, what's going on with it? You think it's just
like if he had that, he probably would have been wearing it. But I think he had to get the tooth removed. And it needs time to heal on the inside, and then they can go do some work again after. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm not a dentist, but I did as much research on that one as I could.
You got a lot of research in for not being a dentist.
Very true.
Yeah. Call me the tooth doctor. But hey, I don't know. But maybe he was embarrassed about it, and then there was like a whole diversion gone wrong. So
that's what I was thinking. He's like, how can I get the attention off my tooth?
All right, well, jumping off of Cole Beasley before we get too far into the Cole Beasley can of worms, I'm curious what you guys think of Zack Moss and his recovery, because obviously we saw him really coming into his own last year, especially in the playoffs, tail end of the regular season into the playoffs, and then obviously he got hurt in that Colts game. But really, when you see him get hurt and you see them take the card out, you think like something really serious. And thankfully, I'm pretty sure it was just an ankle sprain, a pretty severe one, but it was some sort of ankle injury, not a fracture. I think I might have said that in the past that it was a fracture. There was no fracture. What?
It was reported a fracture.
It was?
Yeah, it was a high ankle sprain with a fracture. But we don't know if the fracture needed to be surgically repaired. What they did repair was the ligament, the syndesmosis ligament that holds the tibia and the fibula together. So if you guys think about a chicken wing flat, right? Right, you know how it has the two bones?
Yeah.
Well, the fat one would be the tibia, that's your big shin bone, and then it's got this little wing bone, that's your fibula. I'm pretty sure he broke his fibula when he twisted it, so he had a high ankle sprain. So now think of where it would attach at one tip. Now that's separated, okay? That's your syndesmosis. So they had to go in and do a tightrope surgery. So they just kind of put like a little band through there and pull them back together. Tua had that done and then rushed back for the national championship game in like record time. I don't want to steal your thunder here, but moral of the story is it takes about 3 months to get back to sport related activities. And then if you have time, like no need to just like jump in the fire. And I think that's probably why he was on a rep count in camp.
Yeah, right.
So we got some play, but like he wasn't in there a lot. So because he's right at about 3 months, so they're probably just like, you look good, but no need to push it.
Right.
Then you come back from stuff like this, you get tendonitis and things like that can pop up if you do too much too soon. So
no, I'm glad you stole my thunder, because I literally didn't know how I could talk about this outside of like what we can see from Zack Moss going forward. I didn't have the nitty gritty of the whole medical side of things. So I'm glad you did steal my thunder like you did, because I was going to ask you guys like why is he still wearing that red non-contact jersey? But now I'm glad he is. Like I'm glad they're taking their time with him. I want him to be back fully healthy when the regular season rolls around. I guess I'll frame it this way. Jeremy, do you want to see a lot of him in the preseason knowing all of this, or would you rather him kind of like slowly and methodically work his way back and just see him full go for week 1?
Oh, well, first I just want to say Alex really knows his audience. That's really smart going with the chicken wing analogy. Explaining a Bill's injury. I think everybody in the chat was like, I know exactly what he's talking about. But as far as what I want to see, I mean, I'm sure whatever they do, I think will be the best and the smartest. You know what I mean? If he has to come back slowly to be safe, I think they will. We kind of saw what he was starting to become towards the end of the season. And, we can always go back to, what if the run blocking was a little better? Like how much better would our running game would have been? So, yeah, if they need to just ease them back in, that's fine. I see no reason for them to use preseason to get like too much out of them. I think he had enough of a rookie year like experience to where they don't need to overdo it in the preseason. So yeah, I'd be totally fine if when the time came they just kind of ease them into it, and then just give Christian Wade 90% of all the running back snaps, so Bills fans are happy.
Oh man, we've had a lot of just egging on Bills fans already here. We got chicken wings, we got Christian Wade, we got Dane Jackson slander, we got it all. Alec, I'll ask you it this way. Considering Zack Moss had his first offseason stripped of him because of the unorthodox offseason that 2020 was with COVID and the pandemic, do you think Zack Moss is going to have a slow start this year because he kind of had his offseason stripped away from him again because he was rehabbing? Do you think he's going to start off slow? Do you think he's going to take a back seat to Singletary? What do you think is going to happen in 2021 with Zack Moss?
I think they're going to ease him into everything. Like Jeremy was saying, I think that's the way to do it. Play it safe and save him and utilize him later on in the season when we need fresher legs and we need that young talent to be able to help us carry us and keep us going throughout the playoffs and late in the regular season and stuff like that. But I think that it's going to be a little bit lighter for him in the early parts of the season. Make sure he's 100%, make sure his ankle is all good. Nothing's going to go bad.
Yeah, because you're definitely right. Like I really want Moss to just hit the ground running. He's been the dude I've been rooting for in this backfield. Not to say I don't like Devin or anything. I just really wanted the Bills to draft Zack Moss in the 3rd round of 2020 draft, and they did. And I'm just so hyped that they did that I just want this dude to have a great career. And you could see it like starting to come to fruition. You could see this dude starting to figure things out. Games start to slow down for him a little bit. And then, of course, right when he's about to really make a name for himself in the playoffs and having a really pretty productive and efficient game, it just gets taken away from him. So I hope he can come back smoothly next year and be the best version of himself, as Sean McDermott loves to say. But thankfully, Singletary put in some work, and he'll be able to pick up hopefully where he left off from his rookie season. I guess I'll spin it there. Jeremy, it looks like you have something to say, though, before I spin it to Singletary.
Oh, yeah, you're really good at watching my face for those kind of things. I kind of want to bring up John's comment here. He was saying, we're deep at running back. Can we talk about Williams? I think our running back room is a good reason to not rush Zack Moss into anything.
Right. Mm-hmm. Good point.
It'll be interesting to see how this running back room turns in, because McBean, so far they've always only kept 4. That 4th one is usually a special teamer. And I think I feel like maybe that 4th spot comes down to Taron Jones or Antonio Williams. But with all those guys, especially during the preseason, like I said, don't rush Zack Moss. He's going to be on the team. He's going to make the 53. Right. So maybe use those preseason snaps to see who you really want to keep out of Rada, Williams, Taron Jones, if he is. I think we'd much rather, again, I think we're talking about the or the special teams only players. I heard Antonio Williams won an award for special teams in college. So God, I would love to see him challenge Taron Jones for whatever it is they do on special teams. That's the phase of the game that I think a lot of us are very oblivious to. But yeah, I just kind of want to talk about the running depth room and how what John mentioned, and how we don't have to rush to rush anybody. No double pun intended. Sorry.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think, Alec, we've talked about it a few times where we're trying to figure out how to get 7 wide receivers on this team, and we think a way to do it is to only keep 3 running backs. The problem is, if you're only keeping 3 running backs, you need one of those 3 to be a heavy special teams contributor like Taron Jones is, but I don't want Taron Jones taking the lion's share or even a significant share of offensive reps at running back. So that Antonio Williams little jab or introduction by John there in the chat, that's a good little counterpoint, because if the Bills only roster 3 and that 3rd is Antonio Williams, we saw what Antonio Williams can do on offense in week 17 last year. We saw it. He has potential on offense. And then Jeremy, like you said, he won awards in college for his contributions on special teams. If we can get that kind of 50-50 contribution from him in that 3rd running back role, and then maybe stash a 4th guy on the practice squad, I think that's a beautiful way for us to construct this roster in a way where we're getting the most out of positions that we use the most, like wide receiver. So, Doc, do you have any final thoughts on running back before we hop into our last and next conversation?
No, but I'll just verify. Zach shouldn't have any limitations come preseason. That he'll be at about 6-7 months. He'll be long past the full recovered.
Well, I'd love to hear that.
You guys, just a heads up.
This is why you're here, Doc. This is why you got the stethoscope, right? That's what that's called. Did I fuck it up?
Yeah. Yeah. No.
That's why you got it.
Otherwise, I'd be on WebMD looking things up for people. So
God knows how accurate that is. Just save everyone time and just be the hypochondriac of the world.
But if I got one problem with that whole Singletary picture, is guys, he's a running back, and
I know
I love that his upper body looked good, but don't you guys want to see
show
his
me the
thighs?
legs? Yeah, show me the legs.
Yeah, for sure.
I do. I
of course
do
you want to see his legs.
Well, of course, yeah, of course. He of all people wants to see his legs.
I see that lower body fully flexed.
But he's not wrong.
Judge it.
He's what, 5'7", 5'8", something like that.
Yeah,
he had a great low center of gravity, but if you put on all that weight up top, you raise that center of gravity and get rid of everything he had in contact balance, which I think we've all seen. As much as we may not like what Singletary did last year, he still had great contact balance. And that's a huge trait for running backs, the ability to stay up after first contact. So, yep, I agree with you. Hopefully he still has good contact balance, good little low center of gravity.
Maybe he'll get the message and then post a selfie between now and camp.
Yeah, hopefully we'll take a little screenshot of this and a little screen recording of this and send it his way. Say, hey, Thigh Doc over here wants a picture of those thighs.
Well, there's a stat out there that Moss and Singletary were pretty high up there when it came to like yards before contact or something like that. Like every time they had the ball, they had like maybe a yard before.
I think it was yards after contact. I think it was one of the two. The
stat I was thinking was basically they had like very little room, like between them and like the defender when they were given the ball. And despite being so high up on that list, they still both averaged like over 4 yards per carry, which isn't great. But for to be on a team with poor run blocking, I think that's better than being like, sub 4. So I think the talent is there. That's why I think the run blocking just needs to improve, and we'll see both of them do much better.
100%. That's a great way to put a cap on that conversation, because they definitely are a lot better than they get credit for. All right, so we'll move on to the last topic of conversation, and I kind of just added this impromptu because I feel like there's a lot of conversation going on right now about Josh Allen and was he bolstered by Stephon Diggs? Was Stephon Diggs bolstered by Josh Allen and all that nonsense? But I specifically wanted to hone in on the contract extension and the comparison with his peers, Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson from that 2018 quarterback class. I will pose the question this way. I want to start it by asking who you guys think deserves the most money in that contract, guaranteed, whatever, however you guys want to shake it. Who do you guys think out of those three deserves to be paid the most? And Doc, I'll start with you.
It's Josh. It is. And
are we all in unison there?
He's got you want a couple checklist points. I mean, the stats are now there. Mm-hmm. That was lacking. He's great with the team. You can make that case for any of the guys, but you could just tell if he's winning with his arm, and we know he can run, but the fact that now he can win with his arm, his ceiling is like he's in the 99th percentile now. It's amazing. So I was there going to be a big drop off? No, I don't see why it would be coming. So I don't know why those little whispers are coming. Yeah, maybe he might not throw 4,500 yards, but actually now they're throwing an extra game in. He's probably going to have like 4,700. Who knows?
Right.
I would agree, because obviously Josh is the better passer, and you want your quarterback to be a better passer. It's more efficient, and he's a better passer than Lamar Jackson. And we hear about how some defenses might be catching on to Lamar Jackson and like Greg Roman's scheme, and that can seem like a possibility. I don't know if you can say the same about Josh Allen and Brian Dable. Like, he's a good passer, so I would value that over Lamar Jackson. I'm okay with like the Devils after they want to go with Lamar Jackson if he does, because sure, Josh has had one really good year. Lamar Jackson's had his MVP year and been okay outside of it, but yeah, I would absolutely favor Josh Allen, because again, he's a better passer.
So, Alec, are you in agreement with all of us? Because I'm gonna spill the beans. I'm definitely thinking Josh is most deserving. Alec, are you in agreement?
Yeah, I think he's most deserving, but everyone's gonna make the argument because Lamar won the MVP that he deserves it more. But I think going down the road, everyone's gonna see that Josh Allen is the better quarterback over Lamar Jackson.
So I'll flip it right here. This is why I asked it the way I did. I think we all, as we just said, agree that Josh is the most deserving of the highest paid contract out of those three guys. But who do you guys think will actually get the highest contract out of these three guys? Because I don't think it's going to be Josh, even though I think Josh deserves it. So, Alec, I'll start with you, and we'll go backwards around. Go Jeremy, then Doc. Alec, who do you think is actually going to end up getting the most?
I think it's going to end up being Lamar, just because they don't have as many offensive weapons around him. So I feel like they have more money to advocate his way. And because of the MVP and they believe he's a transcendent talent and all that stuff, I believe that they will give him the most money. But like I said, I think Josh Allen deserves it way more.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy?
I would agree with Lamar. His MVP season, if anything, to an outsider, his resume looks a little better. He actually did win the MVP.
Mm-hmm.
He's taken his team to the postseason every year. And despite Josh Allen being, we know he's a better passer, Lamar Jackson still had like 41 passing touchdowns the year he won MVP. So despite the yardage might not be there, but you could argue that the passing touchdowns are still there. And I could see him getting paid first and more. And I would also love for Josh to get paid before Baker, so we can see the Browns pay Baker more and just laugh at it afterwards. I think that would be fun too.
We'll get to that, but Doc, what are your final thoughts to wrap that up?
I think timing's everything. So I think it's going to depend on when they get it hammered out. So if Josh is the last domino to fall, he's definitely going to get the most.
Yeah.
Baker can really screw and slow this up big time. He could not, he's probably in line to get the less amount of money. But if he wants to say, no, hey, pay me or I'm not signing it, kind of like Dak did, and then he gets the franchise tag, now we're really going to drag out Josh's contract. That's what I would assume, unless Lamar just kind of jumps on something. So I would assume Josh would get paid the most. I think Josh is going to get paid the most, but anything with this timeline can really screw things up. He might also say, hey, give me the most money, but Josh gets the most length on the contract deal. Do you know what I mean? So it's not, you're not comparing apples to oranges between the contracts. Yeah.
Right.
And then, it's team friendly for kind of while we ramp up off the COVID salary cap reductions. And then boom, he's getting paid a truckload in like 3 years.
Right. I think you put it really well by saying it's all dependent on the timing. But I'm going to bring it back to the point on Lamar's MVP, because I really think accolades and stats and the whole comparative nature of contracts is really a big part about it. Like, obviously the timing, like you said, is probably the most important thing, or 1A, 1B. But really, because Lamar has an MVP, it just merits more money. And I am so thankful that Josh finished second in MVP voting for that reason, because now we're going to get a discount on a player that is MVP caliber just because he didn't win MVP, and just because Aaron Rodgers had such a great year this year. I think we as Bills fans and Brandon Beane as the general manager got lucky. They just saved money in a very arbitrary way. So,
and Josh won't appear on the Madden cover and suffer the Madden curse. So
all great dubs for all of us in Bills Mafia. But
curse might be over.
Yeah, it really might be.
Mahomes won it on the cover.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if it only affects one of them or if it affects both of them. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to have to go back to the Troy Polamalu, Larry Fitzgerald cover if it affected both of them or just one of them back in, I think that was like the 2011 cover.
We had a debate about this on my podcast. We said now that they both aren't, do they split the curse? Do they get 50-50 of the curse, or does it jump around? If Mahomes is playing at 1 p.m. and Tom Brady's playing Monday night, does the curse jump on a flight and then go to Monday night to do both of them? Just it's debatable.
Yeah, Polamalu had a bad year, and I think he got injured that season. But Larry had a nice steady year. But
I was about to say Larry's so consistent.
I don't think the team had the success that they should have had that year. And then Mahomes, he got knocked out in the playoff game. I thought that was the curse, but I don't know what they did to his brain there in that week.
I just I want to hop back into this Lamar thing because I'm being called out, but I also want to agree with the call out here because John, you're right. I think wins and stats are just about as important as MVP. The problem is I don't think Josh is so consistent with his wins and his stats. That's kind of where that MVP puts Lamar over Josh because he has an MVP. He has more consistent stats, even though he might not have like the passing yard stats. But he's been consistently winning since he's been in the league, despite obviously not getting over that hump in the playoffs. But, I'd argue that the peak of what Josh Allen was last year, definitely better than what Lamar has been throughout the entirety of his career. But then you throw in the MVP and it's like, you have to pay the dude for that. Just like how in the NBA, players literally, you see their Supermax contract goes up just because they make an All-Star game appearance last year. Like those little things do get thrown into the contract. I agree with you. It's definitely not like the reason Lamar's going to get paid more, but it's part of that equation. And then secondly, I saw this. This may actually significantly impact that final cost. Lamar's been making it through his entire NFL career right now with his mom as his agent, and she's been killing it because I think everyone has kind of heard this news and they're like, wow, so that's why it took him so long to get his rookie contract signed. And then now it's this, and it's probably going to take equally as long, and there's going to be all these deliberations over the whole thing. And hey, as long as they get what they deserve, take as long as you want, because honestly, she's probably playing it right by playing hardball. And if Lamar's the last to sign, he might get the highest paid contract out of all those three quarterbacks.
That's kind of smart, making your mom your agent, because then you don't have to buy her a house or a car afterwards. It's like, no,
just gets the commission.
You use the commission to buy that for you.
That's really funny. Before we take off, I wanna talk about the last component of this specific topic, and that's Baker Mayfield. And Jeremy, you talked on it, so I'll let you talk on it first. But do you think the Browns are going to make a mistake by re-signing and extending Baker Mayfield, or do you think it really depends on the figure of that contract to make a definitive statement on that?
I don't think they'd make a mistake by extending him. I mean, he had a good rookie season. He had a bit of a slump, but again, I think Sam Darnold has gotten a lot of excuses because of like the situation he's been in, you know, with like different coaches, different OCs. Baker's been in the same thing, but he's shown some success. But you could also say because the talent was there, it was just the coaching. So I think, you know, he can continue to play well for them if they, you know, continue to put talent around him. And we were talking about this on, you know, a discussion I was a part of earlier. You know, if he's not top 10, but top 15, I think you extend that quarterback because it's just too risky to think. I mean, where are you going to go? Like, because the Browns aren't going to finish with a top 10 pick, and you don't want to try and trade away everything to get up there. But, you know, Baker's shown that he can carry a team, and I think he's completely fine. So I don't think that they would make a mistake by extending him.
Doc, do you think it would be a mistake, or are you more in line and aligned with Jeremy on those thoughts?
You say Doc?
Yeah, I did.
Oh,
Way to put a cap on the show, Doc.
Wait, hang on.
You good over there?
That needs to be in the highlights.
Oh, that will be in the highlights.
Oh, wait a second.
100% will be in the highlights.
Did he plan this?
Jeez.
Oh,
What the hell happened? Fell off my cushion.
Yeah.
God.
And your shirt
Anyways.
changed color.
Oh, it's funny you say that. This is a 1-of-1 jersey penny reversible, double stamped Buffalo versus everybody. Thank you to Buffalo logo.
Nice.
Going back to Mayfield, they got to re-sign Mayfield. I mean, that's the best quarterback they've had in 20 years.
Yeah.
It just stinks because you feel like he's not. He came out like a cannon, right, in his rookie year, and they're like, "Wow, he is the truth." And then he kind of just fizzled. He's got a lot of pieces around him to kind of get the train moving, and I'm not sold that he can carry a team. So, I actually think it's awesome if they dump a ton of money to him and get stuck with him for about the next 4 years. Especially when that contract's going to eat up, they're not going to be able to keep their linemen and their running backs, and I don't think they're going to have sustained success.
I like the backtrack because I kind of said I think, you know, he can carry a team. I think there's more to it because they have a good defense. They have a pretty well-rounded team. So I guess he doesn't need to carry a team, but he's like good enough to, you know, quarterback an offense. I want to rephrase how that mentions.
Yeah. So Alec, what piece those two bits of evidence together? Where do you stand on this?
So I think he could game manage for that team, but only for a team like that. I don't think he could win games for another team that's any worse than the Browns. I don't think he has that kind of talent, but I think the Browns do have to extend him because, like Doc said, he is probably the best quarterback they've had in 20 years. In my life, probably.
Yeah, definitely. We're about the same age. He's definitely the best quarterback I've seen on the Browns. But
Right.
I think you put it really well, all of you guys, with Baker Mayfield. He's probably the best quarterback they've had, so they have to re-sign him. But I think he's a quarterback, like, the Browns don't win games because of Baker. He helps. He helps, and they don't win in spite of Baker. They're somewhere in the middle of that spectrum where he's not the reason they're losing, he's not the reason they're winning, but he's helping that team stay like even keeled. Yeah, I agree with you though, Doc. I think he's on a team right now that has a lot of talent around him because he's on a rookie contract. When he's not on a rookie contract, things change, and he's going to have to be the reason that team wins. He's going to have to elevate the play of everyone around him because he's the top dog, he's the top earner, he's the alpha dog of that team. And I think he has the intangibles to lead a team, but I don't know if he has the physical ability, or at least at this point, I haven't seen the development of that physical ability to the point where I think he's really going to lead a team and be the reason for the Browns being as good as they are. But man, what he has around him, like, this is the year. This is the year for me to like eat those words and for Baker to prove me wrong. Because right now I think a lot of people are on that teetering point where it's like, yeah, they have to re-sign him, but dumping a lot of money into Baker right now could end up being a big mistake because it takes away from the totality of what that roster could be and the opportunity cost of paying other players.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like if Jarvis can't get paid, I don't think he's going to take much of a discount. He seems like the guy's like, I'm out of here. See you later. And then you're kind of starting over at receiver. And he hasn't even shown, people still kind of question his chemistry with OBJ, who is, one of the best wide receivers. So,
yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting one. And boy, I think we're all glad with the quarterback we ended up getting in the 2018 draft. Really, I think we were all shocked to hear Allen after Josh, but definitely happy that it was Allen and not Rosen because he wasn't even in this conversation. He's a backup. He might be a practice squad backup. So we definitely, I don't want to say we lucked out there, but things like that's what makes you feel great about where the Buffalo Bills are and the hands that we as fans are in. We're just kind of here for the ride, and Brandon Beane has us in the palm of his hands pretty much, and he's doing a great job with it. So I don't think any of us can really complain from that front, especially in that 2018 crop of rookies. So any final thoughts from anyone? Because that is just about it. We didn't even get to the Q&A because we got 4 heads on here now. We got a lot more to talk about, a lot more opinions. But any other lasting final opinions that anyone wants to put out there?
I had something I wanted to put out there, and I forgot about this when we were talking about the defensive line. I was saying how crowded this defensive end room is, and there's about 6 guys that could make this team, but we might just go with 5. Do you think it's possible, any of you guys, again, feel free to chime in, that maybe we carry 1 extra defensive end this year and 1 less tackle because of the versatility of our defensive end room? Because you hear about the versatility of Epinesa, back when we got him, and then Basham, Rousseau, Obata, these guys who can kick inside. I would hate to see Obata go. He kind of seems like he's on the outside because he's not a draft pick. And so, I'm just curious if you think if we carried 6 defensive ends for this reason, do you think that's a possibility this season?
I definitely think it's a possibility. It's going to be interesting because I'm not going to sit here and say I only want to keep 3 defensive tackles. That's the main issue with this. I think if you're telling me the magic number is 9 for the defensive line, then I would shake it out in your scenario where it's like we're keeping an extra defensive end. I would say, all right, then we're keeping 6 defensive ends and 3 defensive tackles. And I think you hit the nail on the head by saying we have a ton of dudes that can reduce down and play inside. I don't know if Epinesa fits that role anymore because of the whole weight loss thing. Yeah. I think he's still got the technique and the tactical skills to do it. But physically, I don't know if he's still there. I would have to see it. But yeah, you think about guys like Rousseau, Basham, and Obata, and I think that exactly right there is exactly how Obata is going to make the team. Right now, I think his his spot is up to the decision they make on Addison and the decision they're going to make on the equation of the defensive line. If it's 9 as the magic number, if that means 6-3, or if that means 5-4. That's what Obata, in my opinion, that's what his chances boiled down to. Doc or Alex, you guys got anything to add on that?
No, that's what I would like to see. But I just don't think these DNs, they can kick down inside, but not on like standard rushing situations.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know how much weight that's going to pull.
I mean, Rousseau did have a lot of experience rushing from inside in college, so I think that definitely could be something that happens. But of the other guys, I'm not too sure how much experience they have with an actual pass rush inside or trying to stop the run inside.
I know Basham had a lot of reps in the Senior Bowl. He put a lot of reps out there from the interior, and I know the coaching staff has been talking a lot ad nauseum about him being able to reduce down and play from the interior. But I really mostly worry about those guys as run defenders in that role. And it's funny because I like Basham and Rousseau as run defenders on the edge, but for whatever reason, I just get a little bit more skittish about it when we're talking about them playing a true like 3-tech role, something like that. But it's a really interesting dynamic that you bring up, Jeremy, because it's something I've thought about in as a way to like mitigate this whole issue that we all see with the crowded defensive line group. It's just going to come down to what the vision is between McDermott and Bean right now and what they want to do for the future. Because, we opened the show with defensive tackles, and I guess we're ending the show with defensive tackles and what the hell we're going to do in that area of the field. So, it's interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it from us today on the Writers' Room. I just want to honestly thank you guys for coming on the show first and foremost, but also I want you guys to remember that it's not just us. There's a ton of other people. Obviously, we got new heads on this week with Jeremy joining us, but it's not just us. There's more writers, and we plugged all the articles that we wrote this week, but there's other people producing content at thebuffalofanatics.com, and any support is greatly appreciated. Really just coming on and you guys sticking with us for the full hour and 17 that we're at right now. We appreciate it immensely. We do this for us because we love to talk about the Buffalo Bills, but we do it for you because we know that you guys love to hear content about the Buffalo Bills. We're all just waiting. We want training camp to start. We want more consumable content, not just speculation content, but we're getting there. We're getting closer, and hopefully we're keeping you guys entertained, and we're doing a good job of it. So thank you everyone for joining us in the Writers' Room, and we will be back. I actually won't be here next week. I can see if someone can fill in for me because it's 4th of July and I'm going on vacation, but we'll try to be back next week. We'll try to stay consistent for you on these Sunday night shows. But that is it for us on the Writers' Room, and I would like to close it out with a Go Bills from all of you. So I'll round it off with a Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.